Behind the towering gates and time-worn walls of Britain's royal palaces lies a history often retold, but not always truthfully. For generations, the monarchy has existed not just as an institution of power, but as a carefully managed story shaped by tradition, repetition, and myths that hardened into facts. But what happens when these stories are questioned? When long-accepted tales are examined more closely? Tonight, we gently explore 21 British royal lies, claims, rumours, and widely believed stories that history itself never fully endorsed. Some arose from political speculation, others from sensational headlines, misunderstood customs, or modern viral misinformation. Repeated so often they felt real, even when they weren't. Each story has been carefully researched and calmly debunked using historical records, journalism, and verified sources. From fleeting online hoaxes to centuries-old misconceptions, you'll hear how these myths began, why people believed them, and what the evidence actually shows. Before we begin, take a moment to settle in, dim the lights, get comfortable, and allow the pace to slow. This is history meant for rest, told softly, without urgency. And while you're here, feel free to leave a comment letting us know where you're listening from. Is it late evening in London, early morning in Sydney, or somewhere in between? We love knowing who's keeping us company during these quiet hours. Now, let's begin. Debunked myth number 21. The false belief that everything we know about royals comes from official sources. This claim is not true. It's a widely held misconception that all public knowledge about the British royal family originates from official statements, press releases, or palace communications. In reality, the historical and contemporary record of the monarchy is shaped by a variety of sources, including journalists, historians, private letters, biographies, and archival documents. No single entity controls the narrative entirely. The origin of this myth may stem from the royal family's tradition of privacy and highly managed public appearances. Because the monarchy historically controlled access to reporters and photographers, some viewers assumed that the limited information available must be official and complete. Over time, the idea that everything comes from the palace became a shortcut for explaining gaps in knowledge about the royals' private lives. Social media and tabloids have also amplified the notion, blending speculation with fragments of official statements. Credible sources paint a far more nuanced picture. Historians studying the monarchy often rely on personal letters, memoirs, parliamentary records, and newspapers to reconstruct events. Biographers of Queen Elizabeth II, Princess Diana, and other members of the royal family frequently draw on interviews with staff, diplomats, and contemporaries, offering insights that go well beyond what the palace publishes. Even modern journalism benefits from investigative reporting and archival research, showing that the public's understanding is a synthesis of multiple viewpoints. Importantly, this myth also underestimates the role of independent verification. Academic studies and historical analysis frequently cross-reference sources, distinguishing rumor from fact. For example, claims about royal family dynamics, policy influence, or ceremonial decisions are often documented in diaries, government correspondence, or trusted news outlets rather than solely relying on official palace statements. The historical record and journalistic investigation both confirm that knowledge about the royals is far more complex than official releases alone. Verified reporting, archival research, and first-hand accounts all contribute to our understanding. While the palace provides a curated view of ceremonial life, the broader picture comes from diverse sources that have been examined and corroborated over decades. In short, the idea that all royal information comes directly from official sources is a false rumor. Multiple independent channels contribute to the public record, ensuring that the stories we know about the British monarchy reflect more than just what the palace says. Debunked myth number 20. The myth that the monarchy has never apologized for anything. This claim is not true. The idea that the British monarchy has never apologised for mistakes or missteps is a persistent misconception. In reality, the royal family has issued formal statements, expressed regret, and participated in reconciliatory gestures at several points throughout history. While public apologies are rare and carefully worded, they do exist and have been verified by reputable sources. The origin of this myth may be rooted in the monarchy's image of dignity and tradition. Because royal communication is often measured, formal and ceremonial, some observers interpret silence or neutral statements as stubbornness or refusal to acknowledge error. Tabloids and online commentary have reinforced this narrative by framing the royal family as infallible or detached, even when apologies have been made. Historical examples contradict the myth. Queen Elizabeth II issued a formal statement expressing sorrow for the death of Princess Diana and acknowledged public grief in ways that were unprecedented for a monarch at the time. Prince Charles has also apologised for misjudgments in personal letters and public statements. Furthermore, the monarchy has engaged in acts of reconciliation toward communities affected by colonial or historical decisions, signalling awareness of past mistakes. These gestures are documented in verified reporting, letters, and historical accounts, rather than being speculation or rumour. Journalistic and historical analysis shows that royal apologies are often subtle, measured, and symbolic rather than sensationalised. They may be included in speeches, interviews, or official statements that emphasise reflection and responsibility. This nuance is easily overlooked, leading some to assume that no apology has ever occurred. The historical record and verified reporting confirm that the monarchy does, at times, acknowledge errors or express regret. While the language is carefully chosen to preserve decorum and continuity, these actions demonstrate accountability within the context of royal tradition. In short, the notion that the monarchy has never apologised for anything is a false rumour. Verified sources and documented statements show that the royal family has occasionally issued apologies, corrected past actions, and recognised public concerns. The reality is far more complex and measured than this enduring myth suggests. Debunked myth. Number 19. The myth that royal titles never change. This claim is not true. The idea that royal titles are fixed for life and never evolve is a persistent misconception. In reality, royal titles can and do change over time due to marriage, inheritance, official reforms, or decisions by the reigning monarch. The system of peerage, succession, and honorifics in the United Kingdom is complex and allows for adjustments that reflect changing circumstances. The origin of this myth likely comes from the perception that royal titles are permanent symbols of status. Because titles like prince, duke, or princess are often seen in the media attached to the same individuals for many years, it's easy to assume they never change. Additionally, films, television series, and simplified historical narratives often present titles as static, reinforcing the misconception. In practice, historical records and official sources show that royal titles have frequently changed. For example, Queen Elizabeth II's husband, Prince Philip, was originally a Greek and Danish prince before being granted the title Duke of Edinburgh. Prince William's children have seen adjustments in titles based on royal decrees and succession rules. Even the Queen herself held multiple titles throughout her life, including Princess Elizabeth, Duchess of Edinburgh, and ultimately Queen of the United Kingdom and other realms. These changes are well documented in official announcements, parliamentary records, and historical accounts. Journalistic and academic analysis confirms that title modifications are often tied to ceremonial, political, or familial considerations. The monarchy uses these changes to reflect hierarchy, succession, and cultural tradition, rather than as arbitrary decisions. Understanding this system helps clarify why some people mistakenly believe titles are immutable. The historical record shows that royal titles are flexible, formally assigned, and subject to change under specific circumstances. Verified reporting, legal records, and scholarly studies all reinforce that the idea of unchanging titles is a debunked myth. In short, the belief that royal titles never change is a false rumour. The reality is that titles evolve according to rules of succession, marriage, and royal decree. And this nuanced system has been carefully documented over centuries. Debunked myth. Number 18. The false belief that the royal family is always united behind closed doors. This claim is not true. The idea that the British royal family is perpetually harmonious in private is a long-standing misconception. While public appearances are carefully choreographed to show unity and decorum, historical and contemporary accounts reveal that disagreements, differing opinions, and personal conflicts have occurred behind the scenes. The origin of this myth likely stems from ceremonial displays and media coverage. Royal events such as state occasions, weddings, and public engagements are designed to emphasize solidarity, giving viewers the impression that family harmony extends to private life. Tabloids and social media often exaggerate this image, framing any public disagreement as shocking, which further entrenches the idea that any perceived unity must reflect reality. Historical evidence and credible sources show that private disagreements have been a recurring feature of the monarchy. For example, correspondence between Queen Elizabeth II and other family members indicates differing opinions on public roles and personal choices. Biographies of Princess Diana, Prince Charles, and other royals document tensions over marriage, duty, and media relations. Even within the current generation, differences in priorities, charitable focus, and approaches to public life demonstrate that private dynamics are more nuanced than outward appearances suggest. Journalists and historians emphasize that this does not indicate dysfunction or scandal, but rather normal family interactions within a unique institution. The monarchy's protocol encourages maintaining composure and decorum in public, which is why the reality of private disagreements is often invisible to casual observers. This careful separation between public presentation and private reality contributes to the persistence of the myth. The historical record and verified reporting confirm that the royal family, like any family, experiences conflicts, differing opinions, and complex interpersonal dynamics. Public displays of unity are often a matter of tradition and protocol, not proof of unbroken private harmony. In short, the notion that the royal family is always united behind closed doors is a false rumour. Verified sources and historical analysis show that private dynamics are often complex, with disagreements handled discreetly. Public composure does not mean private unanimity. Debunked myth. Number 17. The false belief that royals don't influence fashion or culture. This claim is not true. The idea that the British royal family has no impact on fashion trends or cultural habits is a persistent misconception. In reality, royals have long influenced public tastes, from clothing and accessories to interior design and etiquette, often sparking trends that extend far beyond palace walls. The origin of this myth may come from the perception that royals lead secluded lives, insulated from everyday society. Because their appearances are highly managed and their personal preferences sometimes framed as tradition, it's easy to assume they do not shape broader cultural trends. Popular media and simplified narratives can reinforce this misunderstanding by presenting royals solely as ceremonial figures rather than trendsetters. Historical and contemporary examples clearly show their influence. Queen Elizabeth II's iconic hats and tailored coats, Princess Diana's pioneering fashion choices in the 1980s and 1990s, and Kate Middleton's modern wardrobe selections have all inspired widespread emulation. Designers, retailers, and magazines frequently note the royal effect, where public interest in certain styles, colours, or brands spikes following a royal appearance. Even subtle choices, like the selection of brooches or handbag brands, can shape consumer behavior and set cultural trends. Journalists and historians highlight that royal influence extends beyond fashion. Public support for charitable causes, awareness of certain social issues, and even shifts in etiquette have been driven by royal initiatives and visibility. While the monarchy operates within a formal ceremonial framework, its members actively participate in cultural life, indirectly guiding public tastes and social norms. Verified reporting and scholarly studies confirm that the idea of royals having no cultural impact is a debunked myth. Observed trends, media analysis, and documented public reactions all show that the monarchy continues to shape fashion and cultural habits across the United Kingdom and globally. In short, the notion that the royals do not influence fashion or culture is a false rumour. The historical record, verified accounts, and contemporary observations demonstrate that their choices often inspire trends, guide public behaviour, and leave a lasting cultural imprint. Debunked myth. Number 16. The myth that royal marriages are always happy arrangements. This claim is not true. The belief that all royal marriages are harmonious and happily arranged is a long-standing misconception. While public ceremonies and appearances may convey unity and tradition, historical and contemporary accounts reveal that many royal marriages have faced personal challenges, conflicts, and even estrangements. The origin of this myth likely comes from the ceremonial nature of royal weddings. Lavish public celebrations, formal photographs, and media coverage often highlight joy and stability, giving the impression that royal marriages are universally happy. Additionally, movies, television, and popular narratives frequently romanticize royal unions, reinforcing the perception of unbroken contentment. In reality, historical records and verified sources show that royal marriages are influenced by political, dynastic, and social considerations, which do not always align with personal happiness. For example, the marriage of King George IV and Caroline of Brunswick was fraught with conflict, public scandal, and estrangement. Queen Victoria's marriage, though personally devoted, faced strains due to grief and the pressures of succession. More recently, the highly publicised marriages of Prince Charles and Princess Diana, as well as Prince Andrew and Sarah Ferguson, highlight personal and public challenges despite ceremonial appearances. Biographies, letters, and journalistic accounts document disagreements, separations, and efforts to maintain public composure, showing that appearances often mask private difficulties. Journalists and historians emphasize that royal marriages are complex, shaped by duty, protocol, and public expectation. They are not immune to the tensions experienced by ordinary marriages, though the stakes and scrutiny are significantly higher. Recognizing this complexity helps dispel the notion that ceremonial displays necessarily reflect private happiness. Verified reporting and historical records confirm that the idea of always happy royal marriages is a false rumour. The evidence shows that while many royals strive for duty and decorum, personal challenges and conflicts have been a recurring aspect of their family lives. In short, the notion that royal marriages are always happy arrangements is a debunked myth. Historical documentation and credible accounts demonstrate that royal unions, like any family relationship, can face personal difficulties despite outward appearances of harmony. Debunked myth. Number 15. The myth that the monarchy has never been abolished. This claim is not true. The idea that the British monarchy has existed uninterrupted throughout history is a persistent misconception. In reality, there was a period during the 17th century when the monarchy was abolished, and England was briefly a republic under the rule of Oliver Cromwell. The origin of this myth likely stems from the enduring presence of the monarchy in modern times. Because the institution has existed continuously for centuries since the Restoration in 1660, Many people overlook the period known as the Commonwealth of England, 1649 to 1660, when the monarchy and House of Lords were suspended and executive power was exercised by the Lord Protector and Parliament. Over time, the focus on continuity and tradition has contributed to the false belief that the monarchy was never interrupted. Historical records clearly document the abolition. Following the execution of King Charles I in 1649, England became a republic, and Cromwell eventually assumed the title of Lord Protector. During this period, the functions of the monarchy were replaced by parliamentary authority and a council of state. The monarchy was later restored with Charles II, but the intervening years are well documented in official records, letters, and contemporary accounts. Scholars and historians use these sources to analyze the constitutional, social, and political changes that occurred during the Commonwealth. Journalistic and historical analysis shows that the misconception also persists because the modern monarchy has emphasized stability and continuity, making the brief Republican period seem like an anomaly rather than a historical fact. Media coverage, textbooks, and popular narratives often simplify royal history, leaving gaps in public understanding and fostering myths about uninterrupted monarchy. Verified sources confirm that the notion the monarchy has never been abolished is a false rumor. Archival documents, biographies, and historical studies all demonstrate that England was a republic for over a decade, proving that the monarchy's continuity was interrupted. In short, the belief that the monarchy has never been abolished is a debunked myth. The historical record shows that while the monarchy is a long-standing institution, there was a definitive period under Cromwell when it did not exist, and this fact is widely documented and verified. Debunked myth number 14. The false belief that Queen Elizabeth II never broke tradition. This claim is not true. The idea that Queen Elizabeth II strictly adhered to all royal traditions without exception is a common misconception. While she upheld many ceremonial customs, historical and contemporary records show that she quietly modernized certain practices and adapted aspects of royal life to changing times. The origin of this myth likely comes from her public image of steadfastness and decorum. Media coverage and official photographs often emphasized continuity, protocol, and tradition, giving the impression that the Queen strictly followed every established custom. Over time, the public came to assume that tradition was never challenged or altered during her reign. In reality, numerous examples demonstrate her subtle modernization. Queen Elizabeth II updated protocols for media access, embraced new technologies such as televised Christmas broadcasts and digital communications, and allowed flexibility in court etiquette. She also adjusted royal routines to accommodate the changing roles of family members, supporting women in leadership and public engagement in ways that were unprecedented for a monarch of her era. These changes were carefully implemented and documented in official reports, biographies, and historical analyses, showing that she was both traditional and adaptive. Journalists and historians emphasize that this approach was deliberate. By respecting ceremony, while introducing incremental modernization, the Queen maintained the monarchy's relevance in the modern era without appearing radical or disruptive. This nuance is often overlooked, leading to the misconception that she never broke tradition. Verified sources confirm that the notion Queen Elizabeth II never broke tradition is a false rumor. While she maintained a strong sense of ceremonial continuity, she also navigated subtle reforms that reflected changing societal norms, demonstrating adaptability alongside respect for history. In short, the belief that Queen Elizabeth II never broke tradition is a debunked myth. The historical record and verified accounts show that her reign balanced respect for royal customs with measured modernization, challenging the idea that tradition was followed without exception. Debunked myth number 13. the false belief that the crown jewels are worn daily. This claim is not true. The idea that members of the British royal family wear the crown jewels in their everyday life is a common misconception. In reality, the crown jewels are ceremonial objects kept securely in the Tower of London and are only worn or displayed during specific state occasions, such as coronations or the state opening of Parliament. The origin of this myth likely comes from the frequent use of photographs and media coverage showing the crown jewels during major royal events. Images of crowns, scepters, and ceremonial robes create the impression that these items are used regularly, when in fact they are reserved for formal historic ceremonies. Television, films, and social media have further reinforced this notion, presenting the jewels in a dramatic and continuous way that exaggerates their everyday presence. Historical records clearly show how and when the crown jewels are used. They are maintained under strict security in the Tower of London, with access controlled by the crown jewels staff. Coronations, state openings, and occasional special ceremonies are the only events when crowns, scepters, and other regalia are worn or displayed. Even the Queen's consorts or heirs to the throne do not wear these items casually, and photographs of daily life rarely include any of these ceremonial pieces. This is well documented in official palace records, historical accounts, and museum archives. Journalists and historians note that the misconception arises from conflating symbolic representation with actual practice. Media often highlights the jewels for dramatic effect, giving the public an exaggerated sense of their everyday use. Understanding this distinction helps clarify the reality of royal ceremonial life versus popular perception. Verified sources confirm that the belief the crown jewels are worn daily is a false rumor. Their use is limited to formal, ceremonial contexts, and the public record clearly shows that they remain securely stored the majority of the time. In short, the idea that the crown jewels are part of everyday royal attire is a debunked myth. Historical documentation, official records, and trusted reporting all confirm that these iconic pieces are ceremonial symbols, not items of daily use. Debunked myth number 12. The false belief that the royal family has always been popular. This claim is not true. The idea that the British royal family has consistently enjoyed widespread public support throughout history is a common misconception. In reality, popularity has fluctuated greatly depending on political, social, and personal circumstances, with periods of intense scrutiny and public criticism. The origin of this myth likely stems from the monarchy's enduring presence and highly visible public events. Ceremonial occasions, royal weddings, and milestone celebrations often receive extensive media coverage, creating the impression of uninterrupted admiration. Additionally, modern narratives emphasizing pageantry and continuity can overshadow historical periods of controversy, giving audiences a simplified view of public sentiment. Historical records provide multiple examples of fluctuating popularity. During the reign of King George III, public dissatisfaction over taxation and war sparked unrest, while King Edward VIII faced intense criticism for his proposed marriage to Wallis Simpson, ultimately leading to his abdication. In the 20th century, Princess Diana's tragic death revealed both immense public devotion and critical media scrutiny of royal conduct. Even Queen Elizabeth II experienced dips in approval during periods of perceived aloofness or political tension, as documented by surveys, newspapers, and historical analyses. Journalists and historians note that the monarchy's popularity is shaped by both ceremonial visibility and substantive actions. Royal involvement in charitable work, public appearances, and adaptation to social change often restores or maintains favour, while scandals, divorces, or controversial decisions can temporarily diminish it. Understanding this cyclical nature of public opinion corrects the misconception of constant admiration. Verified sources confirm that the belief the royal family has always been popular is a false rumour. Public support has ebbed and flowed over centuries, influenced by political events, social change, and individual family members' actions. Surveys, historical accounts, and contemporary reporting all reinforce this reality. In short, the idea that the royal family has consistently been universally admired is a debunked myth. Historical documentation and verified reporting show that popularity has varied widely, and public sentiment has often been more complex than the simplified narrative suggests. Debunked myth number 11. The false belief that royals are born rich and never work. This claim is not true. The idea that members of the British royal family are born into wealth and spend their lives without work is a common misconception. In reality, modern royals carry out extensive official duties, manage charitable organisations, and engage in public service, often maintaining demanding schedules that require skill, time, and commitment. The origin of this myth likely comes from the perception of privilege and ceremony. Lavish residences, high-profile events, and extensive media coverage of royal lifestyles can give the impression that royals do not contribute professionally or meaningfully to society. Over time, movies, television, and social media have reinforced this simplified image, focusing on wealth and luxury rather than work and responsibility. In practice, historical and contemporary records demonstrate that royal duties are substantial and often involve specialised work. Queen Elizabeth II conducted weekly audiences with ministers, reviewed policy briefings, and represented the United Kingdom on state visits around the world. Princes and princesses such as Prince William and Kate Middleton engage in charitable initiatives, public campaigns, and patronage of organisations ranging from mental health to environmental conservation. Even ceremonial events, while symbolic, require preparation, coordination, and leadership. These activities are documented in official schedules, biographies, and verified journalistic reporting. Journalists and historians emphasize that while the monarchy provides financial resources and social status, modern royals are expected to contribute through public service. Their work is not always visible in the traditional employment sense, but it involves diplomacy, charity, governance support, and cultural representation. Understanding these responsibilities corrects the misconception that royals live solely in leisure. Verified sources confirm that the belief that royals are born rich and never work is a false rumour. Public duties, charitable involvement, and ceremonial responsibilities all demonstrate that royals actively contribute to society in ways that require dedication and effort. In short, the notion that royals do not work is a debunked myth. Historical records, biographies, and verified reporting show that while wealth and status are part of royal life, meaningful work and public service are central to their roles. Debunked myth number 10. The false belief that Princess Diana was going to be queen again. This claim is not true. The idea that Princess Diana was in line to become queen after her divorce from Prince Charles is a long-standing misconception. In reality, royal succession is governed by clear rules that determine the line of inheritance, and a divorced spouse of the heir does not regain a position in the succession line. The origin of this myth likely stems from intense media coverage of Princess Diana's life and the public fascination with her relationship with the royal family. Tabloid speculation, rumours, and dramatizations created the perception that she might resume a formal royal role, even though legally and constitutionally this was impossible. Over time, this narrative became widely believed despite a lack of factual basis. Historical and legal records confirm the truth. Princess Diana divorced Prince Charles in 1996, and as a result, she retained the title of Princess of Wales by courtesy, but she was no longer in the direct line of succession. The British monarchy follows strict succession laws, where the throne passes to legitimate heirs in direct descent from the reigning monarch. Since Diana had no claim to the throne herself, she could never become queen again, even if public sentiment favoured her. These details are documented in official records, historical accounts, and legal analyses of royal succession. Journalists and historians note that misconceptions about Diana's potential return to royal status were fueled by emotional storytelling and public attachment to her persona. While she remained a prominent public figure and continued charitable work, her formal position within the monarchy did not change after the divorce. Verified sources confirm that the notion that Princess Diana was going to be queen again is a false rumour. Legal and historical records show that succession rules made this impossible, and public speculation does not alter the constitutional reality. In short, the belief that Princess Diana was poised to regain a royal position as queen is a debunked myth. The historical record clearly demonstrates that her role after divorce remained ceremonial and charitable, without any legal claim to the throne. Debunked myth. Number 9. The false belief that the royal family controls the government. This claim is not true. The idea that the British royal family directly governs the United Kingdom is a long-standing misconception. In reality, the monarchy's role is largely ceremonial and symbolic, with political authority exercised by Parliament, the Prime Minister, and other elected officials. The origin of this myth likely comes from the monarchy's historical role. Centuries ago, kings and queens did exercise significant political power, which over time has been reduced through constitutional developments and legal reforms. Public fascination with the monarchy, combined with dramatizations in film, television, and literature, has created the perception that royals still wield direct governmental control. Social media and tabloid speculation further amplify this misunderstanding. Historical and contemporary records clearly show the limits of royal authority. Queen Elizabeth II's duties included formally appointing the Prime Minister, giving royal assent to legislation, and opening Parliament, all of which are ceremonial steps guided by constitutional convention. She was required to act on advice from elected officials, rather than exercising independent decision-making. Similarly, other members of the royal family have roles in public service, charitable work, and ceremonial functions, but they do not set policy or pass laws. These facts are confirmed in constitutional documents, scholarly analyses, and verified journalistic reporting. Journalists and historians emphasize that while the monarchy symbolizes continuity and national unity, real governance is carried out by elected representatives. The ceremonial involvement of royals does not confer executive power, and attempts to conflate symbolism with authority are inaccurate. Understanding this distinction helps clarify why the myth persists and why it is incorrect. Verified sources confirm that the belief that the royal family controls the government is a false rumour. Legal frameworks, constitutional conventions, and historical practice all demonstrate that political authority resides with Parliament and elected officials, not with the monarchy. In short, the notion that the royal family governs the United Kingdom is a debunked myth. The historical and legal record shows that their role is primarily ceremonial, and real decision-making power lies with elected representatives. Debunked myth. Number 8. The false belief that royals are above the law. This claim is not true. The idea that members of the British royal family can act outside the law without consequence is a persistent misconception. In reality, the monarchy operates under the UK's constitutional framework, and legal accountability applies to the royal family, although some aspects are managed through established protocols. The origin of this myth likely comes from the historical perception of divine right and privilege. Centuries ago, monarchs were considered sovereign in all matters, and this perception carried into cultural narratives, drama, and popular storytelling. Over time, This belief was exaggerated and simplified into the idea that modern royals are legally untouchable, even though the constitutional monarchy has evolved considerably. Historical and legal records demonstrate the limits of royal privilege. While the sovereign is technically immune from prosecution under the law, other members of the royal family are subject to legal regulations. Cases involving taxation, inheritance, and civil disputes have applied to royals in documented instances. For example, King Edward VIII and Princess Margaret both experienced legal and societal constraints that shaped their personal and public actions. Additionally, the monarchy functions within a system where parliamentary legislation governs national law, and royal assent is required for legal enactments, highlighting the constitutional rather than personal authority of the monarch. Journalists and historians emphasize that the myth is fueled by ceremonial privilege and public perception rather than actual legal immunity. While the monarchy enjoys certain formal privileges, the broader family and their estates are subject to legal obligations, and the UK's democratic institutions ensure oversight and accountability. Misinterpretation of these ceremonial roles contributes to the false belief that royals are above the law. Verified sources confirm that the belief that the royal family is above the law is a false rumour. Constitutional law, parliamentary records, and historical precedents all show that while ceremonial privileges exist, legal accountability applies, and royals are not exempt from the rule of law. In short, the notion that members of the royal family can act outside legal constraints is a debunked myth. The historical and legal record confirms that they are subject to rules, regulations, and constitutional limits like any other citizens. Debunked myth. Number 7. The false belief that the crown is worth billions and belongs personally to the king. This claim is not true. The idea that the British crown and its associated wealth belong personally to the monarch is a common misconception. In reality, the crown estate, which generates significant revenue, is held in trust for the nation, and only a portion of its income is allocated to the sovereign through the sovereign grant. The origin of this myth likely stems from the visible opulence associated with the monarchy, such as palaces, ceremonial regalia, and high-profile events. Media coverage often highlights the grandeur of royal life without clarifying distinctions between public and private wealth. Over time, this has contributed to the misunderstanding that all assets associated with the monarchy are personal property. Historical and financial records clarify the distinction. The Crown Estate includes property, land, and commercial holdings across the United Kingdom, but it is not the personal possession of the monarch. Revenue from the Crown Estate is surrendered to the Treasury, with the sovereign grant providing the royal family with a fixed percentage to fund official duties. Private wealth, such as Balmoral Castle, Sandringham House, and personal investments, is distinct and belongs to the family as individuals. These distinctions are documented in financial reports, parliamentary records, and reputable journalism. Journalists and historians emphasize that confusion arises because of the visible displays of wealth and ceremonial splendor. While the monarchy benefits from both public funding and private estates, only the latter constitutes personal wealth. Misunderstanding the legal and financial structure of the Crown Estate contributes to the false belief that the king personally controls billions of pounds in assets. Verified sources confirm that the notion the crown is personally worth billions to the monarch is a false rumour. Parliamentary records, financial audits, and expert reporting all demonstrate that most royal assets are held in trust for the nation, and personal wealth is separate from institutional holdings. In short, the belief that the crown itself is privately owned by the king is a debunked myth. The historical, financial, and legal record shows that while the monarchy enjoys substantial resources, the Crown Estate operates for public benefit, with only a defined portion allocated for official use. Debunked myth number 6, the false belief that Henry VIII had 6 wives, because he was obsessed with romance. This claim is not true. The idea that King Henry VIII married 6 times purely out of romantic desire is a common misconception. In reality, his marriages were driven largely by political, dynastic, and religious considerations, rather than personal passion alone. The origin of this myth likely comes from dramatic retellings in popular media. Films, television series, and novels often focus on the sensational aspects of Henry's marriages, portraying them as stories of love, betrayal, and lust. This narrative has overshadowed the complex political context of 16th century England, making it appear as though his marital decisions were guided solely by personal infatuation. Historical records provide a clearer understanding. Henry VIII's first marriage to Catherine of Aragon ended because she did not produce a male heir, which he saw as a threat to dynastic stability. His subsequent marriages similarly reflected concerns about succession, alliances, and the consolidation of power. For example, Anne Boleyn's union was entangled with the English Reformation, as Henry broke with the Catholic Church to marry her. Later marriages, including those to Jane Seymour, Anne of Cleves, Catherine Howard, and Catherine Parr, were influenced by court politics, family alliances, and the pressures of monarchy. These motivations are well documented in letters, official records, and historical accounts. Journalists and historians emphasize that while romance may have played a role in personal feelings, the broader context of succession, political power, and religious authority was decisive. Misunderstanding this context has contributed to the enduring myth that Henry VIII's multiple marriages were primarily a matter of romantic obsession. Verified sources confirm that the belief Henry VIII had 6 wives solely out of romantic desire is a false rumor. Historical records, biographies, and scholarly analysis demonstrate that his marital decisions were intertwined with political strategy, dynastic necessity, and religious considerations. In short, the notion that Henry VIII's 6 marriages were motivated only by romance is a debunked myth. The historical record shows that power, succession, and politics played central roles in shaping his marital history. Debunked myth number 5. The false belief that the British royals are entirely German. This claim is not true. The idea that the British royal family is purely of German descent is a common misconception. In reality, the family has a complex ancestry that includes a mixture of British, German, Scottish, and other European lineages, shaped by centuries of intermarriage and cultural assimilation. The origin of this myth likely comes from historical events and naming conventions. The royal family was known as the House of Saxe-Coburg and Gotha, a German dynasty during the reign of King Edward VII. This led some to mistakenly assume that the family's heritage is exclusively German. Additionally, media simplifications and political discourse around World War I fueled public perception that the monarchy was foreign, even though it had been deeply integrated into British society for generations. Historical records clarify the situation. British monarchs have historically married across Europe for political alliances, which means their ancestry spans many countries. For example, Queen Victoria married Prince Albert of Saxe-Coburg and Gotha, introducing German heritage, but she herself was of largely British and Scottish descent. Over successive generations, intermarriage with other European houses further diversified royal lineage. In 1917, King George V changed the family name from Saxe-Coburg and Gotha to Windsor to emphasize British identity, reflecting both political pressures and national sentiment. These details are documented in genealogical records, biographies, and verified historical accounts. Journalists and historians emphasize that portraying the royal family as entirely German ignores centuries of assimilation, marriage alliances, and cultural integration. This oversimplification contributes to the myth and misrepresents the family's identity. Verified sources confirm that the belief the British royal family is entirely German is a false rumor. Genealogical and historical records demonstrate that the family has a diverse European ancestry and a deeply rooted connection to British history and society. In short, the notion that the British royals are purely German is a debunked myth. The historical record shows a complex ancestry combining British, German, Scottish, and other European lineages, making the claim factually incorrect. Debunked myth number 4. The false belief that royals never show emotion in public. This claim is not true. The idea that members of the British royal family are always stoic and never display emotion in public is a long-standing misconception. While ceremonial protocol emphasizes composure, historical and contemporary accounts show that royals do express feelings, often subtly, during public appearances. The origin of this myth likely comes from the highly structured nature of royal events. State occasions, official ceremonies, and public engagements are carefully choreographed, with strict guidelines for posture, behavior, and interaction. Media coverage of these events, focused on protocol and formality, can give the impression that royal individuals are emotionless or detached. Over time, dramatizations in film and literature reinforce this perception, portraying royals as reserved to the point of being unfeeling. Historical and contemporary records show that royals do display emotions publicly. Queen Elizabeth II was often seen smiling warmly during visits and celebrations, and photographs capture moments of laughter, concern, or solemnity. Princess Diana was widely recognized for her empathetic gestures, such as touching and comforting individuals during charitable visits, which contrasted with formal protocol but became iconic examples of royal emotion in public life. Biographies and verified accounts further document instances where royals expressed grief, joy, or compassion during official engagements. Journalists and historians emphasize that ceremonial composure does not equate to emotional absence. The monarchy operates within traditions that encourage controlled displays, but this does not prevent members from showing genuine feelings. Understanding this nuance helps clarify why the myth persists, despite abundant evidence of emotional expression. Verified sources confirm that the belief that royals never show emotion in public is a false rumor. Observed behavior, photographic evidence, and contemporary reporting all demonstrate that royals can, and do, express feelings while respecting the formalities of their roles. In short, the notion that members of the royal family are perpetually stoic is a debunked myth. The historical and contemporary record shows that while ceremonial decorum influences behavior, royals are capable of public emotional expression. Debunked myth number 3. The false belief that Queen Victoria wore mourning black every day until she died. This claim is not true. The popular image of Queen Victoria wearing mourning black every day after the death of her husband, Prince Albert, is a misconception. While she did observe a period of mourning and adopted black attire for public appearances, historical records show that her wardrobe and behavior were more nuanced than the legend suggests. The origin of this myth likely comes from contemporary accounts and artistic depictions emphasizing the Queen's grief. Paintings, photographs, and later biographies often portrayed her in black, creating a powerful visual symbol of mourning. Over time, this image was simplified into the notion that she never wore anything but black for the remainder of her life. Media repetition and dramatizations in films and books further reinforced the perception of an unbroken period of mourning attire. Historical records, including wardrobe inventories and photographic evidence, show that while Queen Victoria predominantly wore black publicly after Albert's death, she did not do so exclusively. Her private attire included more varied colours, and she occasionally participated in social and ceremonial events where slightly different dress was appropriate. Court records and letters indicate that she maintained mourning protocols, but these were balanced with practical considerations and evolving fashion trends. This nuanced approach contradicts the exaggerated belief of perpetual black clothing. Journalists and historians emphasize that the myth stems from the symbolic power of the image rather than documented reality. Mourning attire was socially significant and visually striking, making it a memorable representation of grief. However, equating this with a lifetime of wearing black oversimplifies both her personal habits and the broader social context of Victorian mourning customs. Verified sources confirm that the notion Queen Victoria wore mourning black every day until her death is a false rumour. Historical documents, photographs, and contemporary accounts all demonstrate that while she observed an extended period of mourning, her wardrobe included variations that reflected practicality, ceremony, and social convention. In short, the belief that Queen Victoria wore mourning black every day until her death is a debunked myth. The historical record shows that her mourning attire was significant but not absolute, balancing tradition with practical reality. Debunked myth number 2. The false belief that the BBC changes its logo colour before royal deaths. This claim is not true. The idea that the British Broadcasting Corporation, or BBC, alters its logo colour to signal an impending royal death is a widely circulated internet myth. In reality, the BBC maintains consistent branding, and any changes in colour for news broadcasts are unrelated to royalty. The origin of this myth likely comes from viral online content and social media speculation. During periods of heightened attention on the royal family, images of BBC broadcasts or graphic changes have been misinterpreted as deliberate signals. Memes and tabloid articles amplified the idea, suggesting a hidden system of forewarning, even though no evidence supports such claims. This perception is reinforced by a public fascination with conspiracy theories surrounding royals. Historical and technical records clarify the truth. The BBC's branding, including the colour of its logo on broadcasts, is determined by programming schedules, design updates, or visual effects for breaking news. There is no documented instance where the network altered its logo specifically to foreshadow a royal death. Journalists and media experts confirm that logo changes follow design standards, software updates, or thematic programming needs, rather than secret signals. Public statements from BBC representatives have also repeatedly denied any connection to royal events, emphasising adherence to standard media practices. Journalists and historians note that this myth persists because it taps into the human tendency to find patterns and anticipate major events. By linking a familiar symbol like the BBC logo to high-profile royal deaths, people create a compelling but false narrative. Understanding this helps clarify that the supposed signal is a product of rumour, not intentional design. Verified sources confirm that the belief the BBC changes its logo colour before royal deaths is a false rumour. Media records, official statements, and expert analysis all show that branding adjustments are routine and unrelated to the royal family. In short, the notion that the BBC uses logo colour changes to hint at royal deaths is a debunked myth. The historical and technical record demonstrates that such claims have no factual basis and are purely the result of viral misinformation. Debunked myth number 1. The false rumour that the Queen was already dead before the announcement. This claim is not true. The idea that Queen Elizabeth II had passed away before the official announcement circulated widely online is a modern viral hoax. It has been repeatedly debunked by reputable journalists and fact-checkers, yet it continues to resurface due to the speed of social media and public fascination with the monarchy. The origin of this myth likely comes from a combination of misinformation and the natural human tendency to speculate about high-profile events. When news of the Queen's death broke, social media platforms and discussion forums quickly filled with unverified claims, screenshots, and supposed inside sources. These posts created the impression that the official announcement was delayed to conceal the truth, even though there is no evidence to support such assertions. Memes, viral tweets, and repeated sharing amplified the rumor, giving it the appearance of credibility to those who saw it out of context. Historical and journalistic records make it clear that the Queen's death was announced in accordance with established royal protocols. Media outlets such as the BBC, Reuters, and The Guardian reported verified facts immediately upon confirmation from the palace. Official statements, timelines, and reporting procedures confirm that there was no prior concealment or deception regarding her passing. This process is documented and publicly accessible, illustrating how the rumor diverged from reality. Journalists and historians emphasize that such myths persist because the public is fascinated by secrecy and protocol, especially regarding figures as prominent as the monarch. Misinterpreted information and viral sharing create a feedback loop that reinforces false beliefs, despite clear evidence to the contrary. Verified sources confirm that the belief the Queen was already dead before the announcement is a false rumor. Fact-checking by multiple trusted news organizations shows there was no early concealment, and that the official timeline matches verified reporting. In short, the notion that the Queen had passed away prior to the official announcement is a debunked myth. The historical and journalistic record demonstrates that this viral claim has no factual basis and exists solely as a product of online misinformation. We've explored 21 myths and misconceptions about the British royal family, from viral hoaxes to persistent misunderstandings about tradition, wealth, and authority. Each story reminds us that history is often more nuanced than the images, headlines, and rumours we encounter online. From Queen Victoria's mourning attire to modern misconceptions about the crown jewels and royal succession, we've seen how myths can take root and spread, even when the facts tell a very different story. By examining the evidence, consulting historical records, and listening to credible sources, we can separate legend from reality. These debunked myths offer a gentle reminder that curiosity and critical thinking are essential when exploring the lives of iconic figures, and that even the most famous families are often misunderstood. If you enjoyed this journey through royal myths, we invite you to stay connected. Like and subscribe to the channel for more calming explorations of history, curiosity, and stories that challenge what we think we know. Each week, we uncover new tales that reveal the real stories behind popular legends, all told in a soothing and thoughtful way. Thank you for watching, and remember, sometimes the truth is stranger or subtler than the myths we believe.